Start.
Hello everybody and welcome. Thank you for coming today. Colleen, Nor and I really appreciate it. We are gathered here today to celebrate the life of our dad, father-in-law, uncle, friend and fellow bowler, Norman Colin Hattersley, known to most people as Colin or Col, except when he was ordering takeaway food, he was always Mr. Norm Collins. It's almost 6 months since Dad passed away on the 14th of October last year. He had turned 101 years old just over 6 weeks earlier. The COVID situation with borders closed left us unable to gather together at the time of his death to give him a proper send-off. So today is our way of saying goodbye. His ashes have been laid to rest beside his beloved Carmel in the Tweedheads Memorial Gardens, near the front entrance of the chapel, in the section that he always referred to, and quite seriously I think, as the Hattersley Memorial Garden. I'll now hand over to Lenore to start today's memorial with the 23rd Psalm.
Thanks, Louise. Thanks, everybody. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me to lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside the still waters. He restores my soul. He leads me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil, my cup runs over. Surely goodness and mercy will follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. As long as Dad dwells beside his beloved Carmel, he will be happy. When I was young, I didn't know my dad very well. As was typical for those days, as a child it was Mum who was the ever-present parent, Dad being at work during the week and working or playing sport on the weekends. However, Dad and I had some quality time together when I started university. He would drop me off at the uni library at 8:15 in the morning on his way to work up Black Mountain, and pick me up again at 9 p.m. when the library closed for the day. Back home, Mum would make us both a hot drink and go to bed, while Dad and I stayed up to watch the late night westerns on the telly. One of his favourites was Have Gun, Will Travel. I still have the theme music in my head. It pops up from time to time, it's very hard to get rid of. Dad didn't have a gun, but he certainly travelled a lot in the course of his career. I will now hand over to Colleen so she can tell you about it.
Thank you. I'm Colleen, right. Okay. As a rule, dads are exceptional people, and ours was not one to break the rules, ever. Everything was done by the book. So what goes into creating one who was a stickler for the rules but still managed to have a full and participatory life? Norman Colin Hattersley was born in Tweedheads on the last day of August 1920. He was the second youngest of 7 siblings. So he probably had at least 7 people giving him instructions for the early part of his life, at least until his mother died when he was in his 6th year. He would have learned that the quickest way to satisfy the requirements of others and have time for himself was to act in a predictable and acceptable manner. In 1928, prior to the Great Depression, the family moved to Brisbane for a few years, meaning that Colin completed his primary schooling in Brisbane, staying with extended family to do so once his family returned to Coolangatta. At the age of 12, his first serious job was that of lolly boy at the Ashgrove Theatre. Some of us, maybe many of us, will remember that call. Ice creams, lollies, chocolates. You got it? In 1934, he secured a Christmas holiday temporary job at Tweedheads Post Office as telegram messenger and mail sorter. There's a photo of him in the smallest uniform available at the time, which was still too large for his small frame. The following year, 1935, he rejoined the post office. This time, his duties included being the night telephonist, as well as delivering telegrams by push bike. This jobs at £50 per year lasted for 2 years and set the path for his subsequent life and career. In 1935, he became a permanent employee of the Postmaster General's Department and remained so for the next 49 and a half years, even though the department changed its name. His wicked sense of humour was developing by then, as he tells us in his book, Wind in the Mast. He says, "Because my voice was not yet broken, when things were slack on the exchange and for something to do, the operators at Brisbane and Murwillumbah would get me to talk to the operator at Lismore and convince him that I was a girl. It finally worked, as one year he came to Tweed Heads for holidays to meet the girl night telephonist. Because he was employed at Tweed Heads in New South Wales, the PMG administration required him to go to Sydney for further training, though he could have applied to be sent to Brisbane. But go to Sydney he did, staying with more extended relations, the Petey family, for some years, and travelling home to Tweed Heads or Coolangatta by train during his 3 weeks annual holidays. When he first arrived in Sydney, they had to place him somewhere, so at Drummoyne Exchange, he was treated like the kid from the bush who had to be taught to operate a switchboard. Remember, he'd already done 2 years doing that. That is, until there was an emergency, and he outperformed the other telephonists on duty by operating 3 boards simultaneously to her 2. The beginnings of his subsequent teaching method of providing learning opportunities, showing rather than telling, and never overwhelming another with his skills and expertise, were evident in this encounter. Colin really grew up during his 6.5 years with Auntie Ruby Petey. He excelled in sport. He learned old-time and nouveau dancing, learned as much as he could from his technical mentors, and found time to play crib in the evenings with Uncle Frank Petey. When war was declared in August 1939, the trainees were advised to finish their training and then enlist if the war was still in progress. Many ignored this advice, but Colin, being a stickler for the rules, he followed it. And then he was advised by the Manpower Committee that as he was especially trained in communications, he would serve his country better by staying where he was. He was refused all 3 services on this basis, so eventually joined a volunteer group known as 2LOC, which meant the second line of communication, who would be called upon if Australia was invaded. In 1939, he was the first junior mechanic to work on his own and also became qualified to send and receive Morse code. By 1940, he was well trained and experienced in telephones and telegraphy, so he chose to specialise in radio and broadcasting for the remaining 2 years of his apprenticeship. He continued to make improvements to existing equipment. He set up several studios, participated in establishing the transmitter for 2NA Newcastle, and experimented on creating new radio-related technology. He learned to build a radio transmitter and how to make tape and disc audio recordings, which was a far more complicated process than the click-and-go process of today. Oh, and did I mention outside broadcasts such as celebrity concerts and even the Randwick races? When presenting the evening program at the ABC radio studios in Market Street, Sydney, ABC announcers and the PNG technical staff were required to wear dinner suits. So there was an element of formality and behaviour expectation in his working day as well as in his relaxation activities. By 1941, his interest in ballroom dancing led him to meet a group of people, including the young Carmel O'Hare, her sisters Molly, Nancy, Madeline and Noreen, and their brother Sydney. Carmel worked at a dress shop a few doors away from the Market Street studios, so it was easy to keep in touch between dances and outings. This family was very different from his own, and he was soon drawn into their gregarious and welcoming midst. His passing closes the chapter on that whole generation of peers in both families. In 1943, Colin and Carmel began their shared love journey, which lasted until Carmel passed away 63 years later. In 1944, he took up a rural posting at 2CR Cumnock, a small town 40 miles west of Orange in central New South Wales. His initiation at Cumnock was to do maintenance and troubleshooting 620 feet, approximately 189 metres, up at the top of the radio mast. During his 5-year stay at 2CR, he had to climb the mast several times as the navigational lights on each landing and on top had to be kept operational. Thus the title of his book, Wind in the Mast. 1944 saw the birth of their first child, Colleen. In 1949, now a senior technician, he accepted a position back in Sydney. The job was to replace the temporary installation of broadcast equipment in the Federal Parliament with a completely new installation. The construction work was to be done in Sydney, taken to Canberra, installed and tested during the Christmas recess from the 31st of October 1949 to the 22nd of February 1950. With 2 other team members, they met the deadline. In 1950, back in Sydney, after success in Canberra, he also installed studios at Tamworth for new regional station 2NU, replaced outdated equipment in Newcastle studios, and did some trips with engineers to rectify other problems in the rural areas. Lenore joined the family the day before Anzac Day, 1950. In May 1952, Colin accepted a full-time position at 2NB Broken Hill. This position included maintaining telegraphic communication with the remote outposts, such as post offices in Tibooburra, Whitecliffs, Darnick in New South Wales, and Radium Hill and Andamooka in South Australia. He travelled. Significant in making this decision to move to Broken Hill was the insider knowledge that 2 cottages were to be built at 2NB in the September of that year. He and Carmel left for Broken Hill in 1952, 31st of May, with the expectation of a brand new house becoming available soon. 2-year-old Lenore and then Colleen, almost 7, joined them to live in 3 successive shared rental properties. In 1955, he challenged the appointment of a new supervising technician at 2CY2CN Canberra. He was eventually appointed to the position, so the family moved from the dry heat and dust storms of Broken Hill to below freezing temperatures in wintertime Canberra. The week they left Broken Hill, erection of the 2 cottages was approved. So in Canberra, between 1955 and 1962, in Canberra, he was responsible for 3 transmitters, technical staff for the transmitters and the ABC studio and recording room in Civic Centre, for maintenance of equipment, organising outdoor broadcasts, and he was the control operator for all ABC broadcasts emanating from the ACT. He was 35 at this stage. This included parliamentary broadcasts and the equipment he had installed 5 years earlier, as well as the annual dawn service from the War Memorial each Anzac Day. There are several stories Dad liked to tell about his experiences in Canberra, like the day in 1957 when military police claimed him from a cricket game. Their security had detected an extra cable in the setup for the impending meeting of the newly formed Southeast Asian Treaty Organisation, and they wanted to be sure there was no unauthorised access. Dad assured them that the cable was genuine. Permission had been granted for several radio and TV stations to attend the opening and closing ceremonies, and the cable was necessary to achieve this. The explanation was accepted. However, after the opening ceremony, Dad's keys to the equipment room were confiscated until the closing ceremony. Then there was the time when Prime Minister Menzies wanted to listen to a locally broadcast tally room result for a Victorian state election. A landline was set up between Melbourne and Canberra via Sydney, and Menzies was supposed to listen in his Parliament House office. But Dame Patty wanted her husband at home. As the service started with a microphone in Melbourne and ended with a loudspeaker at the lodge, it was deemed a broadcasting responsibility. So Dad spent most of that night at the lodge. By the time the broadcast was over, he had smoked 2 cigars, had had several scotch and sodas, had been given a radio and record player to repair for Dame Patty, and had an invitation to drop in at any time for morning tea. When the civic telephone exchange burnt down in 1961, affecting all communications in the ACT, Colin's quick, decisive action meant that there was less than 3 hours disruption in service on that day, and information about the interruption was broadcast from the studio at the 2CY and 2CN transmitter until the ABC studio was functional again. There are many similar stories, so if you have one to tell, please do so today. We'd love to hear it. 1961 was a year of changes. It saw the birth of Colin Carmel's third daughter, Louise, on the day after Anzac Day. It's really good for people like me to remember my sister's birthdays. It was the year Lenore completed her primary schooling and I graduated from high school with my leaving certificate. In 1961, Col was advised to apply for the position of supervising technician at the proposed TV station for ABC3 on Black Mountain, as progress meant that 2CY would eventually move to remote operation and his position there would cease. He applied and then hit the books to inform himself about TV broadcasting and principles and issues. For the first 6 months of the job, he was supervising both 2CY and the installation on Black Mountain. Mast climbing here meant being 500 feet above the summit of Black Mountain, higher than the aeroplanes coming into land. The day he blacked out at the 300-foot, 91 metres level, he decided to end his mast climbing activities. Col was not comfortable with television, so in 1969 he applied for a position as officer in charge of the radio centre at Bald Hills, Brisbane. Here he was responsible for 4QG, 4QR, 2 shortwave transmitters, and for instructing trainee technicians. He commenced duty on the 22nd of May 1970. Worked his magic on challenges that arose, including a design fault in the standby transmitter that caused him to receive a bad radio frequency burn to one hand at 25,000 volts. He stayed at Bald Hills until his retirement on the 31st of August 1984. Colin's interest in technology and his sense of precision has passed on to his descendants in various forms and degrees. We are all obsessed with things being right. He leaves the three of us here today, 6 grandchildren, 7 great-grandchildren and 1 great-great-grandchild. He made 100 not out and withdrew at 101. A pretty good innings all around. Now I'll hand over to Louise to talk about the Col that many of you knew.
It's no secret that Dad was a sports fan. He enjoyed a lot of different sports, and not only the ones he participated in. One of my favourite childhood memories is Sunday afternoons in winter being with Dad tinkering in the garage at Bald Hills while listening to the rugby league on radio. Keeping up with the summer sports of cricket and tennis was a little bit trickier. He solved this problem by tuning into the tennis on TV with the volume off and simultaneously listening to the cricket being broadcast on the ABC radio. When Mum and Dad moved to Strathpine, both of these sports were televised, so 2 TVs were set up in the lounge room, one on the tea trolley so he could see both. Any excitement from the crowd or commentators would determine which screen to focus on. At different times of his life, Dad enjoyed body surfing, playing cricket, tennis, table tennis, soccer, and of course, lawn bowls. From a young age, cricket was a favourite. In December 1928, Dad caught a tram from Newmarket to the Brisbane Exhibition Grounds and saw Don Bradman score 18 runs in his first innings as a test player. Though at the time, Victor Trumper was Dad's favourite player. While attending Ithaca State School here in Brisbane, the school grounds were being extended. And one day during a lunchtime cricket practice, Dad hit a ball that struck one of the workmen in the head, knocking him out and resulting in an ambulance trip to hospital for the poor bloke. At the age of 14, Dad was invited to try out for the Queensland schoolboys cricket team. He was very disappointed that he missed that opportunity, as he was in bed with the flu when the trials were held. About 10 years later, while living in the country New South Wales town of Cumnock, he scored what was at the time, and maybe still is, the fastest century of the Cumnock Cricket Club, with 125 runs in 50 minutes. In 1955, now living in Canberra, Dad joined the Turner Cricket Club. The following year, he was captain of his team and a new player named Bob Hawke joined them. Later in life, Dad really enjoyed telling the story that once he was in the position to tell Bob Hawke where to go. He also played representative cricket for the Postal Institute, which enabled him to travel widely across Australia. It was while he was away on one of these trips that Mum nominated him to become a member of the Canberra City Bowling Club. This was the end of his cricketing days and the start of a really long relationship with lawn bowls. When we moved to Brisbane in 1970, Dad became a member of the Pine Rivers Memorial Bowls Club. He enjoyed roll-ups on Saturday mornings, playing on Saturday afternoons, and sometimes backing up to play on Sundays as well. By the late 70s, he had also joined Astley Memorial Bowls Club, where Mum was also a member. As well as playing bowls, Dad found coaching very rewarding. He was passionate about sharing his love of bowls. In 1974, he qualified as an RQBA coach, the first non-panel member to do so. In 1984, he became a national Level 1 coach, and a couple of years later, a national Level 2 coach. Over time, he was chairman of the Brisbane North District Coaching Committee and a member of the RQBA Coaching Committee, where he established a video training program. In 1995, Dad was honoured with life membership here at Pine Rivers Memorial Bowls Club, and in the year 2000 was awarded the Australian Sports Medal for services to bowls. After moving back to the Gold Coast, he continued to coach at Tweedheads Bowls Club for a few years. Once his playing days were over, Foxtel Sport became his favourite TV channel, and he was always up for a chat about the game of whichever sport he had seen that week. I miss these chats very much. His love of sport stayed with him until the end. Now, if everybody could please make sure they can see the screen, we're about to show you some photos, and I'm sure you'll all see at least one photo of the Col begin you. While looking for ideas about how to arrange today, I came across a poem by Robert Burns. I had not read it before, but it says everything I wanted to say today, so here it is. Epitaph on a Friend by Robert Burns. An honest man here lies at rest, the friend of man, the friend of truth, the friend of age, the guide of youth. Few hearts like his with virtue warmed, few heads with knowledge so informed. If there's another world, he lives in bliss. If there is none, he made the best of this. We think our dad was a pretty good bloke, and it seems other people did too. We've received some lovely tributes, but first I would like to invite Dave Andrews to come and say something on behalf of the club.
Tribute to Norman Colin Hattersley, life member. During this tribute, I'll refer to Col as Norman, Colin and Col. My name is Dave Anthony, immediate past president and current welfare officer of Pine Rivers Memorial Bowls Club. On behalf of the board, management, fellow men and women bowlers of Pine Rivers Memorial Bowls Club, I would like to offer our condolences to Norman's three daughters, Colleen and Louise, their partners, his beloved great-grandchildren, grandchildren and other family members. Colin joined Pine Rivers Memorial Bowls Club on the 1st of July 1970 and his original membership number was 17. Col remained a full member of the club for a total period of 51 years. This made him the longest continual serving member in the club's history. Col was a formidable competitor on the bowls greens. Over the years, he won many social games and club tournaments. He was also the club's first recognised bowling coach, coaching both the ladies and the men over a period of many, many years. In recognition of his dedication and tireless effort in helping to make the club become the success what it is today and the prowess of his coaching abilities, Col was honoured with life membership in 1995. Also in his honour, the board approved the naming of Green 2. A sign was erected in 2001 at the northern end of the green, which then officially became known as the Col Hattersley Green. Col will always be remembered as a loyal and supporting friend to many of our fellow ladies and men's bowls club members, and is sadly missed by many of his old friends within our great club. Rest in peace, Colin.
It is my privilege to say a few words on behalf of the Pine Rivers Ladies Bowls Club. Col and his wife Carmel were members of the Pine Rivers when the club was opened on Gippy Road. When the club moved from Bray Park, Col transferred and became the sole coach for both the men's and the ladies' clubs, and he was very dedicated to helping all members. At one stage, Col and Alex McPherson from Astley Bowls Club ran many tutorials using the blackboard to explain various shots. Later, John T. O'Brien obtained his coaching certificate and was able to assist Col and benefit from his experience. If it not were for Col's dedication, many of the ladies would not have had the opportunity to participate in our great game. I'm I'm sure he will be very proud of the ladies' club carrying on with so many of their own coaches. There would not be too many of our current members who knew Cole, but those who do remember him will always be grateful for his unwavering support. Thank you.
John, would you like to come and say something?
In October 1971, I called in at Asprey Bowls Club to have a look at what they were doing. The first gentleman I struck was colhatts. He then introduced me to the secretary of the then secretary of Pinehurst Bowling Club, Col Lewison, who immediately signed me up. So I walked in as a visitor, and I walked out as a member of the bowls of the Pinehurst Bowling Club. I bowled with Col as coach for many years. Enjoyed every moment. He certainly put a lot of work into the bowls and bowlers, no matter where he went. He was such a dedicated person. I have never seen or never heard of a more dedicated person in this sport as I have with Cole. He was a great friend of mine, and he was a friend of everybody. There was no bowler that couldn't go to Cole. That was men and ladies that couldn't ask him a question, and he'd answer quite clearly and give them a rundown on what was what. So that's about all I can say about him, but he was a great man and a great friend.
As many family members couldn't be here, and some are here, we invited family to send a few words if they wanted to say something about Dad. So this, we're going to read a few each, and this one is from Sue Burnett. Sue sent, Uncle Cole was one of my favourite people. He was a charming, happy man who was a loving husband, father, brother, uncle and friend. He was a caring brother to my mother, never forgetting her birthday and always comforting her in times of need or distress. When Uncle Cole and Auntie Carmel lived in the ABC house at Bald Hills, the competition in our car revolved around who could see Uncle Cole's towers first. Of course, our children always won. During his latter years, it gave me great pleasure to take him out to lunch, always to the Twin Town Sports Club, Benora Point, which was the venue of his choice. He was very good company. We engaged in stimulating conversation and lingered longer, talking about family and current affairs. I'm thankful that I saw him in Coffs Harbour during his 100th year, and am grateful to have had him for my uncle. Rest in peace, Uncle Cole. And for those of you who don't know, Sue is the daughter of one of Dad's sisters. Who is here today?
And this one is from Paul Gilliland, family member. He says, I first met Cole and his family in 1968 and have since enjoyed a long, valued friendship, especially after Cole, Carmel and Louise moved close to us at Bald Hills in Queensland. I found Cole to have a tremendous appreciation for the gift of life, and he set a fine example of commitment to his family, friends, employer and the many friends and associations which he and Carmel enjoyed through their love of lawn bowls. Cole was not only a very competitive bowler but a committed coach with lawn bowls. He was a very active member, with relocating the club following an old club being bought out by Westfield. So much so, Cole's overall commitment was recognised with the green being named in his honour. Cole enjoyed his long working career in the communication fields of television and radio in the main. He was mostly involved in the transmission area of these vital areas of communication. The majority of his working life was in Canberra and Bald Hills. I vividly recall the annual Christmas party which Cole and Carmel provided for the staff at Bald Hills. Carmel made the best curry I have tasted, and the staff consumed the lot, which speaks for itself. This was only one of Carmel's talents. She supported Cole in such an admirable way, and her support greatly helped Cole with his fine achievements. Congratulations, Cole, on reaching the age of 101 years, and many thanks for your friendship over more than 5 decades. Rest in peace, dear friend.
Now, this one's from Natalie Kingston. She's the daughter of Gwen Hart from down at Coolangatta Tweed Heads. When Dad moved down to Tweed Heads, he went to the Historic Society to find out a few things, and the lady that was there said, "You're my cousin," and that was Gwen Hart. So Natalie writes, "Although I didn't really get to know Cole personally, what I can say is, aside from being second cousins, what a true and kind friend Cole was for my mother. Up until relatively recently, she was able to speak to him on a daily basis, and she always spoke of him very warmly and with very high regard. Touchingly, without fail, he would send her a flower arrangement every week, and if for any reason at all the delivery failed, he was on the phone to her, apologising profusely. Their friendship was very special to her, and I know she misses him dearly." And I've just got a couple of little small things from cousin Nolene, cousin on my mum's side. "Nor I will always remember the piano being played in the lounge room at 2CY and singing along. I loved it. Such great memories, and Uncle Cole's laugh." And about the laugh, when I asked my daughter Sam what memories she had of Dad, she said, "Long socks and a hearty laugh."
Alrighty, this next one I'm going to read is from cousin Marie Martinson's. She says, "On a visit to Dixon when I was about 8 or 9 years old, during school holidays, Mum, Auntie Carmel, Louise and I had gone to the pool for a treat. The next few days I was still having a problem with water in the ear canal and running a fever. Of course, I was told to remain in bed. Why, I don't know. Things we did back then. One afternoon, Uncle Cole came to see me with a gift in hand. I was so excited. It was a book to read while my soggy ear healed. It was Beauty and the Beast. I treasured that book for a very long time as he had written a few words inside. This was a special moment for me and lives in my memory to this day and always will, along with many other wonderful things Uncle Cole said or did. This is precious to me. Rest in peace, dear Uncle Cole."
Now remember what I said about the title of his book, Wind in the Mast, and that some of his qualities definitely passed down to future generations. So this is from my eldest son, Michael, and it's called Breeze Beneath the Clothesline, inspired by a much greater book. Granddad, for me, was the starting force for just about everything I enjoy now. He was the first to take me fishing, and I go every chance I get still. He started me driving the ride-on mower at Bald Hills, and I've had a love of motors and machines ever since. He always had time to explain how stuff worked and fueled a habit of model building and electronic kit-type projects, which was inevitably responsible for many things to be pulled apart and rebuilt, always perfectly. Yet another thing I love to do and am still doing. Inadvertently, I'm sure, but it was him who taught me how to turn the cricket on, get a comfy seat and promptly fall asleep. A skill I have honed quite nicely. I have great memories of Grandma and Granddad taking us all over the place in a beautiful blue HQ sedan, beige vinyl roof. Probably the reason I have a soft spot for HQs. One of my life's goals is to be just like Granddad. Thank you.
As Colleen mentioned earlier, Dad was the last man standing of his generation of our family. His death marked the end of an era. We would like to take just a moment to remember the others of that generation. All of these people were important to Dad. On the Hattersley side, Edna and Boyd Jackson, Doreen and Ray Holmes, Bert and Reen Hattersley, Roy and Evelyn Hattersley, Jack and Judith and later Muriel Hattersley, Nita and Sam Thompson. And on the O'Hare side, Molly and Frank Stevens, Nancy and Cedric Yates, Sid and Kathleen O'Hare, Madeline and Doug Gordon, Noreen and George Barr, and most importantly, our wonderful mother Carmel. All gone now, but not forgotten. Years ago, Dad chose this final song to be played at his last hurrah. I think it sums up his attitude to life. In the main, a happy life. Feel free to sing along. Thanks again for coming today. Please stay and enjoy some refreshments and share your memories and stories with us.